Today is Sunday. It's the 2nd of February 2025. And today's talk is about Metta as a path to peace. Peace is something that we all want. Peace in ourselves and peace in the world. People want to live peacefully. They want to live in a peaceful country. But as we also know, people or countries have always been fighting each other. There have always been conflicts, quarrels, and wars. And we also know that people, leaders, have tried to establish peace. And they are still trying to establish peace up to the present day. In a way, it's amazing, but it's also very sad that world leaders have not been able to establish lasting peace in this world. You know, we hear politicians using big words of wanting peace and signing peace treaties. But then they use weapons to bring about peace or wanting to bring about peace. And since a young age, I have been thinking, how can they be so stupid to think that weapons will produce the beautiful flowers of peace? I mean, every child knows that an apple seed will produce an apple tree. A cucumber seed will produce a cucumber. And weapons, they produce blood, hatred, enmity. You might also have heard the phrase, peace is more than the absence of war. Most wars and conflicts arise based on dosa, anger, aversion, enmity, ill will, or they arise based on lobha, wanting, greed, attachment, desire. And both dosa and lobha, they arise in the heart and mind of people. And likewise, do kindness, compassion, care arise in the heart and mind of people. So if we want to make the world free from anger and aversion, free from greed and desire, then we have to ban these destructive emotions from our heart and mind. So the basic cause of all these wars and conflicts that are going on around the world, the basic cause lies in the heart and mind of human beings. And we know, we have said before, Buddha had said that everything originates in the mind. Every deed, every word originates in the human mind. And so we need to tackle the problem at its root. This means that these unwholesome emotions of hatred, enmity, ill will, or greed, desire need to be weakened and finally completely eliminated in each human being. Only when the hearts and mind of human beings are no longer controlled and fueled by these destructive emotions of dosa and lobha, only then will peace be possible. Shantideva was a Buddhist master living in the 8th century. He had said, "How many evil men could I kill? The number is boundless as the sky. But if the thought of anger is killed, all enemies are killed." And something interesting is stated in the preamble to the UNESCO Constitution. There it is stated, "Since war begins in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be built." These are really beautiful words. But what are the politicians doing? They wage wars in the name of peace. This is really absurd. So if we only eliminate anger and aversion from our heart and mind, this is not yet enough to create a good base for peace and harmony. We have to substitute these destructive emotions with emotions or mental states that create harmony, that create mutual understanding, that create peace. As you all know by now, the opposite of dosa, anger, aversion, ill will, this is kindness, loving kindness, friendliness, benevolence. And all, as you also know by now very well, Metta is the wish for the welfare, well-being, and happiness of living beings. So it's not only the absence of aversion or enmity, but it's this heartfelt wish that each living being be happy and well. And now, as you have been engaging in the practice of metta meditation for almost 2 weeks, so wishing others to be happy and well and peaceful actually makes yourself happy and calm as well. In the individual interviews, I have heard many of you saying now that the quality of metta is getting stronger, becoming more continuous, that the mind becomes more calm, more peaceful, more happy, happier. So when we are peaceful, then we ourselves are at peace and we are at peace with the world. So then whatever is happening in us and around us does no longer interfere with our peacefulness, with our happiness, because we are at ease and in peace with ourselves and the world. And in this mode of being, we can meet each person and each situation in a peaceful, calm, and friendly way. We all know, at least intellectually, that anger and all the rest of the destructive emotions are not helpful because they cause so much suffering. for us and for others. And even if we direct our anger, our ill will towards another person, this anger has a great impact on ourselves. Because when anger is present in our heart and mind, then this fire of anger burns in us. So it makes us feel unhappy, crummy. In the course of our Vipassana meditation practice, where we pay mindful attention to these emotional states, also anger, aversion. So there, when we go into it with our mindfulness and feel it, observe it, we come to directly experience this burning nature of dosa. We see how painful that is when it is present in us. So, in the practice of Vipassana meditation, this is the way to understanding and freeing us, letting go of these destructive emotions, because we have experienced and understood it deeply ourselves directly. Since many years, I go and teach also in the Blue Mountains in Australia. That's near Sydney. There is a small meditation center. And nearby, there is also a Sinhalese monastery where there are Sinhalese monks. And some years ago, meeting with Bante Hovida and exchanging about the Dhamma, he said, becoming angry always means you are slowly killing yourself. How true this is. So we might ask ourselves, what is it that keeps the anger in us strong? What is it that gives so much power to the anger or any form of dosa? Basically, it's the identification with the I or the ego, the self. You know, when the I or the ego has been wronged, when it has been insulted or hurt, then the ego has a good reason to get upset and angry. So the ego thinks it has a good reason to express that anger and hurting the other person too. So then reacting with angry words or angry physical actions. For the ego, in a way, it feels so good to retaliate the anger one has received or one has perceived to receiving. And, when we look on our life and experiences, reactions, we surely have experienced that somehow the ego enjoys to be angry because this makes the ego feel good. This gives power to the ego. This makes the ego feel strong and solid. That's why anger and other unwholesome emotions are ego boosters. They really inflate the ego and make it strong. And this is a reason why these destructive emotions are so difficult to overcome. In the scriptures, in the Samyutta Nikaya, there is a short sutta which illustrates this deeply conditioned reaction very nicely. It's the story of the anger-eating demon. I have told this story many times already. Many of the Metta meditators know it, but I really like this story because it illustrates this dynamic of the mind in a very easy, understandable way. So the sutta is quite short. What follows here is a slightly elaborated version. So once there lived a demon who had a very peculiar diet. He fed on the anger of others. And as his feeding ground was the human world, there was no shortage of food. He found it quite easy to provoke a family quarrel or racial hatred, and even to stir up a war was not very difficult for this demon. And whenever the demon was successful in stirring up a war, he had a big feast as long as the war lasted. So he was quite successful. And so one day he was thinking, it's so easy to stir a war or one conflict in the human world. Maybe I should try it in the Deva realms. Might be a bit more difficult, but let's see if I can do it. And so, reflecting in which Deva realm he should go, he selected the Tavatimsa Deva realm, where King Saka was the ruler. Devas are said to have a bit less anger than human beings, but dosa is also still present in Devas. And so the demon, by his magic power, he appeared in the Deva realm, Tavatimsa Deva realm, and in the palace of King Saka. He went to the audience hall where the throne was, and King Saka was not there. He was very happy, so he walked through the hall and sat on the king's throne, sat there grinning and waiting what would be happening. It didn't take long that some of the devas walking by saw that this ugly demon was sitting on the throne of the king, their beloved king. And more devas came and they got upset and angry and shouted, "Go away, go down, you rascal. You are not supposed to sit on the throne. Hey, go." More and more devas came and they all get upset, angry, shouting angry words at the demon. And the demon had a great feast. So much anger, he had a rich meal. And so, having a rich meal, he grew bigger and bigger and bigger until his body had become so big and tall that his head almost touched the ceiling. And so, then at one stage, King Saka had returned. He entered the audience hall, and what he saw didn't shake his mind. He saw this huge, ugly demon sitting on his throne. But we must know that King Sakka had already a deep understanding of the Dhamma. It is said that he was a Sotapanna. He had attained the first stage of liberation. So, not being shaken at all by what he saw, he slowly walked up to the throne. When he got there, he knelt down on one knee and, with his hands in Anjali, said to the demon, "Welcome, my friend. Please remain seated. I can take a chair. May I offer you some tea or coffee? Is it an espresso, or would you like a cappuccino? Or would you rather like some organic fruit juice? We just have these beautiful red guavas where we can make a lovely fruit juice. Or maybe you are hungry. We could offer you some Burmese lapech, the pickled tea leaves. Or maybe you want to eat something sweet. Our devas from Vienna, they just have made this beautiful Sacha chocolate cake. Or what about a pizza? Our Italian devas can make you the most lovely pizza with freshly made mozzarella cheese. Or maybe you are more into fish and chips. So, with each of these kind and friendly words, the demon became smaller. He shrank. And finally, he was just as big as a green pea. And then King Sakka said just one more friendly word. And with this, it went woof, and the demon had dissolved, disappeared. So as long as we feed the anger, the angry ego, then the anger ego is growing, getting strong. By feeding it, we solidify it. And this is the vicious circle. Angrier we get, the stronger the anger ego gets. And the stronger the anger ego gets, the stronger the anger becomes. So to get out of this vicious circle, we have to starve the anger-eating demon. And how can we starve it? By not giving the food he likes. So not feeding him anger, but to feed him kind and friendly food, kind and friendly words, kind and friendly deeds, kind and friendly thoughts, metta thoughts, metta words, metta deeds. That's the trick. It's so simple, but a bit more difficult to put into practice. However, the next time you get upset or angry, try to remember this story and then start feeding the anger with kind and friendly food. You will see, this will work wonders. Not to react with anger or ill will, this is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it's a sign of strength. So if one is able, in the face of somebody's anger, if one is able to stay calm and kind, this shows how strong the heart and mind actually is. This shows how well trained the heart and mind is. So to stay kind, calm, and gentle is not a sign of weakness, but it is a sign of strength. Person who exemplifies this inner strength is, for example, the Dalai Lama, the head of the Tibetan Buddhists. He is deeply convinced that lasting peace for his country, for Tibet, can only be established by peaceful means. And many years ago, he had received the Peace Nobel Prize for his efforts to resolve these problems with peaceful means. But again, there are also quite ordinary persons who have come to deeply understand that the use or expression of anger is actually counterproductive, that the presence or expression of anger is actually creating more problems than solving problems. Quite some years ago, you may have heard of this terrorist attack in Paris when a music hall called Bataclan was attacked by terrorists and 89 people were killed. Right. And a journalist whose wife had gone to the concert, so his wife was killed. And so the husband, the man, the journalist, his response to this cruel and mean attack was not one of anger or enmity, but one of love, of metta love. After the attack and his wife and the other people had died, he posted a post on Facebook, for his friends, but then his post spread around the world. Addressing the terrorists in his post, he had written, I will not give you the gift of hating you. To respond with anger and hatred would mean to resort to the very ignorance that made you what you are. And he also said that he was determined that his son, who was a young boy, that he would educate him in a way that he could be happy and free and not be traumatized by this event. And he added that the world would also not get the hatred from his son. So this journalist's rejection of hatred was the exact opposite of the war language of the French politicians and the reporters of many newspapers. They use this Old Testament language of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But this journalist said, you will not get my hatred. So this was really the most humane and dignified attitude that could be showed against this barbaric attack. In the Visuddhimagga, in the chapter on the practice of metta meditation, at the beginning it says, when one is engaging in metta meditation or before one engages, one could start with some reflections, reflecting on the dangers of anger, dosa, and reflecting on the benefits of patience, khanti. So here I will present a few reflections that can be used. First, few reflections on the dangers of dosa, anger, aversion. For example, when dosa is present in the mind, then we are blind. Then we are no longer able to distinguish between what is wholesome and what is unwholesome. Or we are no longer able to distinguish between what is good and bad, or beneficial or harmful. Or the reflection that if there is dosa in the heart and mind, then we are actually imprisoned. Then we are in the prison of dosa. Or the reflection, if dosa is present in the mind, then we are more liable to make mistakes. We are more liable to take wrong decisions, which we then later regret. And one of the reflections says that when dosa exists, or when dosa is present in the mind at the time of death or before dying, so then the mind is confused, tormented in the grip of dosa. And dying in such a state is not fortunate. It is said that can lead to an unfortunate plane of existence. One can also reflect on some of the obvious, unwanted effects that anger has on the body. So when there is anger, or a person has the habit of getting angry easily, so this can cause high blood pressure or can cause heart diseases, can even cause stroke. Or else we can reflect that an angry person's facial expression does not look nice. I remember so well from my time in primary school, the teacher, he was kind of a good teacher, but just sometimes he had these bouts of anger. And when he would get angry, it was truly not a beautiful sight. So his head became very red, his veins stood out, and his hair that kind of was come to the back, then fell in front because he was angry. Not a beautiful sight. Or else, an unwanted effect of being angry is that people are no longer able to eat properly or sleep. Now, a few reflections on the benefits of patience. Pali word for it is khanti, can be translated as patience. It's also tolerance or forbearance. And khanti, patience, is one of the perfections of the paramis. Patience is also one of the 38 blessings, mangalas. So being patient means that we do not retaliate with anger or irritation when we are hurt or scolded or shouted at or ill-treated. However, being patient doesn't mean that we stay completely passive. You know, we should take action if necessary and appropriate, but we should be careful not to base this action on dosa, but to base it on a benevolent or wholesome state of mind. The Buddha talked about the dangers of impatience and the benefits of patience in one of the suttas. It's found in the Anguttara Nikaya. And here is a summary of what the Buddha there had said. So in regard to the benefits of patience, if a person is endowed with khanti, patience, then the person will be loved by many people. The person will be free from dangers. The person will be free from making mistakes or faults. Or the person will not die with a confused mind and therefore not being reborn in a lower realm of existence, but rather in a good destination. It's also said that there is no benefit that excels patience or tolerance. There is the comparison or the simile. Patience is the weapon of the virtuous person, or power of patience is like the power of an army that can resist the enemy. So reflecting on the benefits of patience, the shortcomings of impatience, we see that there are so many positive aspects to patience. And if you are not already quite patient, then reflecting from time to time can help to become and be more patient. Or the mind will become more inclined to patience, be more willing to be patient. When I was staying in Burma, in the forest center in Mobi, outside of Yangon, and at that time I was taking care of the foreign meditators, also translating for them in the interviews, translating the talks. So at one stage, we had a foreign meditator who had quite an aversive temperament. He got upset and angry quite often because of people and situations. And in one of his interviews with Sayadaw U Janaka, who came out to Mobi to do the interviews at sometimes, he asked him why Westerners seem to have more anger than Burmese people. He must have noticed that Burmese people do not get upset so quickly or so often. And I was sitting in the room listening, and because Sayadaw U Janaka speaks good English, So I was curious what Sayadaw's response would be. And he said, this is so because Westerners do not understand the value and benefit of patience. And I think it's so true. I think that the quality of patience or tolerance has become quite an awkward commodity in the West because nowadays almost everything is available almost instantly. You know, it's just one click away. So these reflections on the dangers of dosa, the benefits of patience, can be used in metta meditation either at the outset of the practice or early in the morning, or these reflections can be used when we get stuck in negativity or when we think we can no longer continue to cultivate metta. In dealing with anger during metta meditation practice, Sayadaw U Indaka usually gives this advice to meditators. So first of all, the first step is simply to notice that anger has arisen, but then not to pay attention to the anger, to let go of it or to ignore it and continue to cultivate metta. You know, this is like turning the head into the metta direction, you know, not turning it to the dosa direction, but turning it to the metta direction. Then the second step to deal with anger in metta meditation, Sayadaw had said, one can apply these reflections, the dangers of dosa, the benefits of patience. Or, as a third step, one could recall a metta person for whom there is this almost spontaneous uh, arousing of metta in one's heart. You know, the heart opens up and there's just this benevolence and friendliness for this person. It could be one's teacher, it could be one's mother or grandfather, whoever. So this is a way to get out of the anger. And as the fourth step, if all of these first three steps do not help to get out of the anger, then Sayadaw says, switch to Vipassana meditation, meaning observe the anger, be mindful of the angry state, heart and mind, deal with it in Vipassana manner until it gets weaker and subsides. And after that, you pick up the metta meditation again. So yesterday, Sayadaw gave the instruction to start cultivating metta for a disliked person, a person you hate, or an enemy. So this means the person for whom normally there is not this spontaneous arousing of metta. And can be challenging, can be difficult, to the point where we think it's really impossible. It seems impossible, but it's doable. It takes time, patience, effort. And the Buddha, in his teachings, was very adamant in saying that we must overcome all forms of hate, anger, aversion, if we want to become completely free. There is simply no way around it. We all know that the Buddha did not approve killing or harming of other beings. He always said that we should not harm or kill other beings. One day, a man came to the Buddha and he put forth this question. And it may seem a bit strange what he asked, because he asked the Buddha, whose killing do you approve? What do you think the Buddha answered? And you might be surprised that the Buddha approved the killing, namely killing of anger. Yes, he said that he approved the killing of anger. In order to kill the anger, or taking some less dramatic words, to overcome the anger, practice of metta meditation can be a great helpful support to eventually completely eradicate all forms of dosa. So on the way to eradicate all forms of dosa, practice of metta helps to weaken anger and by strengthening its opposite, kindness, friendliness. Of course, final overcoming of dosa happens through understanding and wisdom. That is through the practice of vipassana meditation. A verse in the Dhammapada highlights the fact that anger and enmity are only overcome by love, metta love, of course, and not by more hate, more enmity, more ill will. It's this beautiful and well-known verse. It says, hatred never ceases by hatred. By love alone it will cease. This is an eternal law. Hatred never ceases by hatred. By love alone it will cease. This is an eternal law. Although at times it seems so difficult to let go of these negative emotions, states of mind, although it seems difficult, we should make an effort anyway. Because, first of all, if we can weaken dosa, let go of it, it's for our sake. It's for our well being. It's for our peace of mind. Especially through the practice of vipassana meditation, where we observe the anger, feel it, are face to face with the anger, there we come to experience how much dukkha is when dosa is present in the mind. So we come to see how dosa, how unhealthy and toxic it is. Any form of dosa is like poison for the heart. And as we know, these thoughts based on dosa, they are kept alive by repeatedly thinking thoughts of ill will, aversion, and so on. So, nurturing anger by repeatedly thinking those are thoughts towards oneself, towards another person. This is actually like drinking the poison oneself and hoping that the other person will die of it. Bhikkhu Analayo is this German monk, an ardent meditator, and also a gifted scholar. He has said, every minute, every second I dwell in Metta is a moment where I am free from anger. It is training the mind in experiencing the beauty in being without anger. And this is what we are doing here, and what you all have experienced in your practice now for moments, for longer moments, for periods of time when the mind was free from anger. And how beautiful this is. So here is another example of a person who deeply understood that the notion of anger or enmity is first of all poisoning one's own heart and mind. It's a Burmese man. His name is U Tin U, and he was in prison for many years because he was a member of the NLD, the National League for Democracy, the Democratic Party. And during his many years in prison, he was very careful to not let his mind to be overcome by habitual reactions or habitual patterns, namely habitual pattern of getting angry, feeling upset about his situation and the persons who have caused it. So he was careful in trying to see the wardens in the prisons and officers, not to see them as enemies, as one would usually perceive them, but he tried to see them as friends. So he tried to prevent feelings of enmity, ill will against people who simply had to perform their duty as prison wards, prison officers. And in an interview with Alan Clements, U Tin U had said, during that time in prison, I made it a habit to practice generosity. I offered them, the wardens in the prison, I offered them some of the food that my wife brought me here into the prison. With this act of generosity, I wanted to prevent any notion of seeing them as my enemies. So I usually shared some of my food with them. They too had a hard life in prison, even though they were only working there and not being imprisoned. So even if peace out there in the world is not yet a reality, even if people consider others still to be their enemies, it is possible to establish peace in ourselves. It is possible to abandon the notion of enemy and enmity. And the cultivation of metta provides a path to inner peace so that we can be at peace with ourselves and be at peace with the world. So, with these reflections, I end this talk. May we all be able to establish peace in ourselves and with that contribute to the peace in the world.